Hi, it's Sandy Parker and welcome to Crafting for Almost Everyone. Today we're going to be working in that art journal that I made out of a kid's book, and I hope you'll stay tuned. Well, I have this stamp from Prima, and I think it's called Gardenia. And what I want to do with it is I want to stamp it in my book. I did gesso this, but it's not completely you can still kind of see through it. And then you go to the next page, and this is where I thought I would work because I didn't want to have that page, the gardenia stamp, to go over that because it's shiny, and I'm afraid it just won't hold up. So what I want to do, not hold up, I'm afraid that it won't accept the ink. That's what I'm afraid of. So what I want to do is take this, and I'm going to put an ink pad underneath the right side so that I have something to press on, and then the right side is already okay. I think I'm kind of thinking I want to do her on both pages if that works. I don't know if it'll work, but we'll try. I'm going to use archival ink, and I have this big Ranger ink pad that hopefully we'll be able to get all inked up. It's a big pad, that's for sure. There aren't a lot of lines in this image. It's, the lines are really very thin, and that doesn't really bother me because what I think I'm going to do is I think I'm going to use alcohol markers and color her hair in a bunch of different colors. And then after that, I'm going to use embroidery floss that I'm going to dip in Mod Podge or liquid matte medium, something like that. And then my goal is to, I'm not getting this all inked. Then my goal is to glue down the embroidery floss all over her hair into different shapes, like different flowy shapes. I hope that made sense. But that's what I'm going to do with this. My friend Sherry is one of the most wonderful giving people in the world, and she helps at her local animal shelter. And every week, this is a volunteer thing, every week or every other week, they spay and neuter bunches and bunches of animals, and they don't get paid anything for it. She doesn't get paid anything. She just does it out of the goodness of her heart, and I just think she's a wonderful woman. She told me a long time ago, when she first saw this journal, that she really would like to have it when I was done, and she wanted to buy it from me. And I said, there's no way I'm selling you that journal, but I will give it to you. So hopefully, when this is done, it will make her happy, and she'll have a lot of enjoyment out of it. That's my goal. Let me grab an alcohol marker in black so that I can start coloring her in. Here is my black marker. So my first step, it doesn't matter that the lines are overlapped or that I moved the stamp when I did this, because you're not going to see a lot of this anyway. But I did want to have the lines of the outline, so that if you wanted to be able to see her, like if you wanted to see her hair or her face or whatever, that you would be able to see them. And then I'm going to color behind that so that the image is, well, I can't explain what I'm going to do. All I'm going to say is I hope it works. Because, this art journal has been quite an undertaking for me. I never did much in mixed media, and this was such a labor of love for me to learn so many different techniques. So what I did after I stamp this is I went over the whole image with a black Sharpie so that she was nice and dark. Then I took watercolors, and you could use your regular watercolors, or you could use a watercolor pencil and go over it. But the only reason I did it wasn't because I want the color to remain so much, is I wanted a guideline for colors that I'm going to use, because this is just regular school glue that I put in a plastic container. And then I'm going to take, I hope this works, I've never seen anybody do it before, I'm taking embroidery floss, and I divided it so that I have let's see, looks like 3 strands. That still might be too much. And I cut it a piece in half. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set it in my glue. And I have some tweezers here. And what I'm going to do with the tweezers is I'm going to run my thread, my embroidery thread, through my glue with it. And I'm going to try and not have 1,000 pounds of it on there. But you know I probably will. Okay. I don't want this doubled when I put it on. I only want it to be one layer wherever I put it. So I'm going to, don't worry about having glue anywhere beside where you just laid this. You're just going to lay it where you want it, like that. Stick it down. Make sure you've got a lot of glue on this, because you're going to need to make sure you got plenty of glue. And then in my case, I'm going to just swirl this piece around like that. And then I'm going to swirl it back like that. And then put it back up there. Hopefully it looks a little bit less crazy than I think it does. Okay, hold on. Now I'm gonna put that tight up against there, and then move this tightly up against here. I know that the water in the watercolor is gonna dissolve, and it's gonna start changing the colors of things. I don't really care about that. I don't care that my background's gonna change. All I want to make sure of in the end is that I end up having hair out of this. And so if I, like in this case, I need more orange hair, so I'm gonna cut another piece and drag it through there. And I also don't want any to be at the spine of my book. I'm just gonna lay this right there. And I only got part of it wet, so I'm gonna cut hopefully that much more off. Woo! And then I'm going to take my tweezers and move them like that. So we're all laying down. And is there any more I need to put? No, I think the orange section is pretty good. I'm just going to put a ball of orange at the end, right in there. I'm just going to twirl it around and get a little bit of orange right like that. This is a fun project if you want to do it with your kids while we're all home doing nothing. This would be a great thing to do if everybody was at a table. And you could do it with a coloring book, you know, where they just leave the coloring book uncolored, and then they just take their, you could take yarn or thread or pipe cleaners even might work. And you just want to lay them wherever you think you want them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have Rich fast forward through me putting down a bunch of colors, and then I'll come back if I have any insight, which, you know, what are the odds I have any insight, but if I do, I'll come back and talk to you about it. Oh, here's my insight before we go any further. Before you get your hands all messy, cut this into littler pieces, and then that way, before you get all inky or not inky, gluey, that you've already got your thread ready to go. Because that's something I just figured out, is I should have come up with a plan on this before I did it, but I didn't. Well, I feel badly that the camera quit, but you know me, I never notice when the camera quits. So it's still wet, and so what we're going to do next is we're going to dry this, and then I'm going to do some mixed media on the background so that it's fun too. But I'll tell you this much. Here are the tips that I learned from doing this. Cut your strings super small. The shorter, the better. What I found was pieces that were about this long worked the best for me. So that's 2 inches. Let me tell you how long that is. It's about 2.5 inches long. And the reason the shorter ones work better is when I had to get into these little places, it worked for me. And then on this side, because I had to cut everything in half so I could close the book, I made sure that this side wasn't that long either. So that's my recommendation. Cut it really, really short, and cut everything you need before you start doing this. That's another big tip. One last thing that's really important is that if you're going to be doing a lot of one color, I would stack, like, let's say 5 or 6 pieces this length side by side. I'd put a bunch of glue down, and then I would just lay it in the glue, and that really helped me do this too. So we'll wait for this to dry, then we'll go on to the next step and see how it turns out. Well, I forgot to show you how to do the rose, and since I already did it, I'm not going to be able to show you the beginning of it. But what I did was I got the glue really, really soaking wet in the center, and then I'm going to do this around the outside so you can see it. And then what I did was I started in the very center, and I used my tool, and I kind of did this and started by going around and around really close to the center. I'm sorry about the glue and the mess I have on my hands. This is a really, really messy craft. I just thought I would tell you before when I said do it with your kids. I don't know. It's really super messy. You might, if they don't leave the table, maybe, but it's messy. Anyway, so what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to make sure that the end of your thread, floss, whatever you want to call it, is in that glue. Really make sure it's in there nice and tight in the glue. Now what I did is I kept a wet baby cloth right beside me, and then as I did anything and got really sticky, I just wiped my hands on that, and that did help a little bit, but it is a super sticky project. And then you don't want to pull it too tight, because I had problems where it would just unravel or come off, and it was just a nightmare. This is the only piece I didn't cut as I was doing it, because I thought it would be smarter to do it in one big circle. And I don't know if you can see this, but I'm using a little darker color red now. You just want to make sure that you're really stuck in that glue. And if you don't think you are, or if you're stuck to it like I am, you want to add more glue around the outside and on top of it. The more glue you have, the better you're going to do in this. That's what I found so far. I don't know how it's going to dry, but we'll wait and see. But when it came to making this rose, I wanted to make sure you saw it. And you have to make sure that the floss gets in the glue and not your shirt. Okay, so that is the outer part of the rose. You're going to do the inner part of the rose exactly like I explained. And if you have any problems, like, I don't know if you can see right in here, my rose kind of moved a little bit. Tuck things down under if you don't like the way they look, and just kind of play with it with a pair of tweezers. And the tweezers will really help you to make sure you get this well adhered. And then if you think you have too much glue, which, you know, you could have too much glue, you can always rub it into the rest of the floss, or you could wipe it off. What I found is there's always a place on here once I look that doesn't have enough on it, so I just keep touching little spots that don't have any glue just to make sure that it's all going to be well adhered. Let this dry again, and hopefully our rose is going to look good when we're done. I tried to do her lips with the embroidery floss, but honestly, I think they're just too small to do this with. If you want to try it, you could, but like I said, I found them to be a little bit too small to do the project with. We'll let her dry and see what happens next. So my plan for the background at this point is to use some of these glitter glazes from Brutus Monroe. I have purple, and I have like this one is called silver, and this one is called grape. And I thought just having a little bit of fun color on this might just make me happy. Might be too much color, so I'm going to start with the silver, just because you know how it goes. If you start with the wild color, there's no going back. And I thought, I'm using this stencil that's all little bubbles. I just thought they'd be fun. I don't know. Do you think it'll be fun? It's a mystery. We're going to give it a shot, right? I'm going to pull back my sleeves, because you know I'll end up with my sleeves in this, and it'll be a big mess. Oh, before I do that, I think I want to do a little bit of coloring on the background. I have some gray, archival gray ink from Stampin' Up, and I thought the silver on top of the gray would be kind of cool. And I'm going to use one of these Tim Holtz spongy things to do it. All I want to do is lightly. And remember, we're going to put the silver over this, so it's not like all we're going to have is this weird gray. Okay, good enough. Now, we're going to get our little palette knife and our silver. So I'm going to just, let's see, I'm going to just do that. And by that, I mean I'm just going to hold the stencil as close to her as I can and hope that the little bubbles work. What I'm going to do is I'm going to let this dry, and then after all of this dries, then I'm going to come back in, and where I don't have any circles, I'm going to add some more circles. So that's my plan right now. In the meantime, I'm going to really clean off my stencil well and make sure that any extra of this glitter paste I put back in the jar. You don't want to, if you have any on your stencil, I'll show you this real fast, you will end up being sorry that you let that much of it waste. And there's quite a bit on that. I don't know if you, hold on. Can you see that much? That's enough that you don't want to waste it. That's all I'm saying. And I have some on my mat here that I can clean off. Same thing. Put it back in the bottle. And you're good to go. Ooh. So let me dry this off. Well, I'm not going to dry it off. It's going to dry itself off. And I'm going to push down some of these dots. When I pulled off the stencil, some of the dots raised and became kind of teardrop shaped. I don't want that, so I'm going to just pat them down so that they're shaped like circles and not teardrops. Okay, we'll be back. So some of my dots are still wet, some of them are dry, and then I have this, it's a shimmer mist from Michaels, and I can't get the pump to work, which, you know, That happens, especially when you're talking about the ones that are shimmery, because the nozzle gets clogged with the shimmer part. And the reason for that is if you you can see the shimmery stuff right there, and that will go up in your nozzle. So when you shake it, you're supposed to ring it like a bell, you know, like swirl it basically. You're not supposed to do this. Okay, well, I didn't do that, but still mine clogged. So I'm going to use a small brush, and I'm going to just kind of gently cover my background with orange. I'm going to use a little container because I want something I can stick my brush into. See? Do this. Oh, look how I did that. Isn't that fabulous? Look how really, really pretty that is. That shimmer. Loving it. So, in the spots where I don't have any dots right now, I'm just going to be laying down some of this shimmer color. Just because I can. I know that I just blocked you from seeing that. And I'm going to put enough. I'm going to only go, I think, around the very edges of my hair, you know, like that. And then I'll just let it dry. Let's let this dry and hope that it looks good enough to finish it off, and then we'll call this done. So I think we're just going to let it go like this, and we'll see what it looks like when we come back. I might add some stickles now that I think about it. You'll see it when I get back, right? As you know, I was kind of concerned about what those stickles would do to my background, but in the end, I'm not hating it. I think that the hair now blends in more with the sparkly background, and I don't hate it, which is good. The problem is, as you know, I won't be able to close my book, and with that being said, my friend Sherry is going to have to set it like this probably forever, because it won't close. Sorry, Sherry. But anyway, that is the end result. I hope you give this idea a try. It was a lot of fun. The things I would recommend is you stick more to one side of a page, and that you do the project as far to the outside edge as possible. Same thing on this side. If you're going to do the project, do it as far as you can toward this edge as you can, away from the middle, so that the thickness of the hair or whatever you turn yours into doesn't impede closing your book. I hope that you give this a try. I don't recommend you doing it with kids because it is super, super messy and your hands get crazy sticky, and I think it would just be a nightmare with kids. At first I thought it might be a fun thing to do with kids, but in retrospect, I'd say no. So I hope that you enjoy it, that you give it a thumbs up and subscribe, and please tell your friends about me on social media because you know I love that. And please stay inside with your family, stay safe, and I hope that you'll stay tuned for my next video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye-bye.